Right, so an important event that led up to the American Revolution is the French and Indian War. This was when some Native American tribes and France fought against Britain and some other Native American tribes. Great Britain won, pushed the French out of the North American colonies territory, and after this, Great Britain decided that since they were protecting their colonies, that the colonists should help pay for the war, for the cost of the war, because this war is expensive. Right, and Americans weren't too happy about this because, well, they felt that Great Britain didn't have the right to tax them because Great Britain was a few thousand miles away. And since that the colonists had no representation in Parliament, that's like the British Congress, or other people's Congress, that they should not be taxed. So they started to protest. Well, the protesters became known, some protesters became known as Sons of Liberty, such as Paul Revere, Samuel Adams. These people protested Great Britain's taxes, and some decided to go to smuggling to avoid paying Great Britain's taxes. So, to avoid smuggling, Great Britain lowered their taxes. But still, they were still getting taxed, and Americans were not happy about this. And over time, Great Britain taxes just started getting more ridiculous, if you want to call it that. Pretty soon, Parliament passed the Stamp Act, which put a tax on stamps and paper and all that other good stuff. And once again, colonists were not very happy with that. They protested more, so Great Britain Parliament got rid of the Stamp Act. But soon, they bought another tax. And Americans were getting angrier and angrier. And this led to a boiling point between them. Colonists surrounded these 5 British soldiers. The soldiers were terrified, so they fired into the crowd, killing about 5 people. And Americans took to calling this the Boston Massacre. One of the people killed in the Boston Massacre was said to have been a runaway slave named Crispus Attucks. He was not only African, but he was also Native American. And so, Great Britain and the colonies just started drifting further and further apart. Until one night in 1773, that colonists dressed up as Native Americans boarded British ships and threw boxes of tea in the Boston Harbor. This was known as the Boston Tea Party. Great Britain was not very happy about this, so they decided to punish Boston because Boston was the main place where the protests were coming from. You could sort of call it the leader of this. And so Great Britain closed Boston Harbor, and they forced the colonists to pay for the tea they destroyed. And so, as once again they drifted farther apart, right by now, Americans are starting to form militias. Oh, before I go on, the Patriot motto was no taxation without representation. And this means that since the colonists had no say in what goes on, had no people in Parliament, that they felt that they shouldn't be taxed. And once again, just another quick side note, I am pausing just to get my thoughts straight, so I apologize about the pauses. Alright, back to what I was talking about. Americans started forming militias, and if you do not know what a militia is a group of citizen soldiers, and they took to calling themselves the Minutemen, which means they could be ready to fight at a minute's notice. And they started building up arms. If you don't know what arms means, it's weapons. And Great Britain decided that that Americans should not have militias ready to fight them. So they got General Thomas Gage, of the commander of the British Army in North America, to go to march to Concord, and seize the Minutemen's weapons. Well, the Minutemen found out about this, and 3 patriots, Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Dr. Samuel Prescott, rode through the countryside warning fellow patriots about what was to come. Right. So, it's daylight at Concord. About 70 Minutemen raced to Concord, set up to fight, I want to say either 300 or 700 redcoats. And anyway, it's early in the morning, Minutemen are there, redcoats arrive. The Patriots refuse to lay down their weapons, and all of a sudden, a shot rings out. No one knows who fired. All we know, what happened next, the redcoats start firing uncontrollably. When their commanders told them to stop, they wouldn't. So, the redcoat commander actually had to get drummers to play a call to arms. Not call to arms. I don't remember what the song's called. I think it's called the Laying Down of Arms. I'm not quite sure what it was called. But anyway, men are firing. And let's just say the Patriots lose this one. Back in Lexington, however, more Patriots, I think it was the Patriots that had 300, defeated the British at Lexington by hiding, instead of fighting out in the open as warfare was supposed to be during these times, they hid behind rocks and trees and picked the British off one by one. So the British knew that they couldn't win, so they retreated. They retreated all the way back to Boston, and the Patriots won this battle. Right, and so now war's broken out. It's a war between the colonies and Great Britain. The colonies know they had to form an army. So Congress, or Continental Congress, formed the Continental Army. And you know who they got to lead? George Washington. And they thought he was the best choice, the greatest hope America had. And they were right, he was. But at this time, the British were the greatest fighting force in the world. You'd have to be crazy to take on. You'd have to be crazy or very brave to take on the British Army. But the colonists were very brave. They stood up to the Great Britain's government, parliament, and soldiers, and army. So now that war is broken out, the Patriots are rallying to a place called Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill, where the Battle of Bunker Hill takes place. Another side note, the Battle of Bunker Hill was actually fought at Breed's Hill. Well, I'm not going to go into full details about it because I'm running out of time. But yeah, the Redcoats pushed the Patriots off the hill, but at a cost. There were more Great Britain soldiers killed than Patriots. The Patriots just finally ran out of ammo. So they were forced to retreat. During this time, still, even though they had won Bunker Hill, they were still trapped inside Boston. And America still needs... There are some Americans that are still not so sure about going to war. So, a writer called Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense, encouraging colonists to fight Great Britain's tyranny. Right. That's all the time I have today. I'll make another video later.